86 million. Just stop and think about that number for a second.
It's huge.
It really is. We're not talking population here. 86 million bank accounts in Vietnam. Reportedly started being closed this month, September 2025.
And all for one reason, right?
Right.
Failure to comply with this massive mandatory facial biometric authentication.
Exactly. A huge government mandate.
The scale is just almost unbelievable. I mean, you look at the numbers. Out of roughly 199 million total accounts, they said 113 million got verified.
Yeah, okay.
But that leaves 86 million reportedly being locked out. It's got to be one of the most drastic government moves into personal finance we've seen lately.
So, yeah, what we pulled from the sources this week is, honestly, it's a shocking real-world case study. It centers on this massive government lockdown, the chaos it caused for people, citizens, and it seems, especially foreigners.
Right.
And, of course, the reaction from crypto advocates are basically saying, see, this is absolute proof why decentralized money is needed.
Yeah, you can see why they'd jump on it. So our mission today really is to dive into this core conflict.
Okay.
This tension between, state security measures, and let's be clear, they are trying to fight some very sophisticated AI fraud here.
Right. There's a real problem they're addressing.
Definitely. But it's that versus the fundamental rights, you could say, of individual financial sovereignty. Access to your own money.
Exactly. So let's start with the action itself, the mandate, and the immediate human cost. Because it was staggering. Vietnam passed this law demanding facial biometrics for bank accounts.
Simple as that. Comply or else.
Pretty much. And accounts that couldn't or maybe didn't comply, they were just set for closure starting September 1st.
And we saw almost immediately it caused real stress. Real absurdity, actually, like that anecdote we found from the Reddit user, Yexor.
Oh, yeah, the contractor.
Right. Former foreign contractor in Vietnam. Said he had zero remote solution. Nothing. Even though he was already a verified customer, apparently.
So he has an existing relationship with the bank.
Yes. But he was required to physically fly back into Vietnam, book an international flight, just to update his biometrics, just to stop his HSBC account from being closed.
Wow. Having to book an international flight just to prove you are you? So you don't lose access to your own money. That just
wild.
That really hits home, doesn't it? That loss of control. It perfectly shows how precarious centralized finance can be.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
When the rules for accessing your money can just change instantly based on a government decision, well, your ownership feels pretty conditional, doesn't it?
Yeah, conditional is the right word. Maybe we can use an analogy here to really explain what happened to Yuxor and potentially millions of others.
Good idea.
Okay, so think of having a bank account, right? It's a bit like renting a furnished apartment. All the furniture, your belongings inside, that's your money. It's definitely yours.
Okay, I'm with you.
But the bank, or in this case the government, they hold the master key to the whole apartment complex.
Ah.
And they can suddenly decide, we're changing the locks. That's the new biometrics rule. On a whim, almost. And if you happen to be traveling or you've moved away, tough luck. They demand you physically show up with your old key, prove who you are, get the new one.
And if you can't?
If you fail to show, you're just locked out. Permanently locked out of your own stuff, your own apartment, even though you still technically own everything inside.
That's a powerful analogy.
Oh.
And it really captures that feeling of helplessness. The deadline aspect adds pressure, too.
What was that about the deadline?
Well, one commentator, Marty Bent, he noted this claim now. He did say it was unverified.
Okay, important caveat.
Right. But the claim was that if users don't comply by September 30th, the end of this month, they could actually lose their money.
Lose it entirely, not just locked out.
The final fate wasn't totally clear from the source, whether it's recoverable later or gone. But even just the threat, it shows how fast a central authority can impose these really punitive controls.
Yeah. The absurdity of Yuxor having to fly, the sheer scale of 86 million accounts, it brings us to that core question. Why?
Right.
Why do something so extreme, so punitive? It can't just be about control for control's sake, sure.
No, it's definitely not arbitrary. And we have to shift focus a bit here to understand the threat they genuinely seem to be fighting.
Okay.
The Vietnamese government brought this in specifically to fight fraud and money laundering, sophisticated stuff. They were apparently seeing a huge surge in spoofing techniques.
Spoofing like?
Like using generative AI to bypass their existing security. Things that used to work suddenly didn't.
So wait, is AI now so good it can actually fool liveness detection? You know, that thing where you have to blink or turn your head for the camera?
Precisely, that's the level they're dealing with. They are essentially fighting a full-blown AI arms race.
Wow.
And look, there was a specific incident. Back in May this year, local police busted an AI-powered money laundering ring using fake facial scans.
Seriously, how much are we talking?
That single operation, they estimated, laundered about 1 trillion Vietnamese dong, which translates to roughly 39 million US dollars.
Okay, line, just stop you there. $39 million. That is serious fraud, no question.
It is.
But is the solution potentially locking 86 million people out, forcing expats onto planes? Is that really a proportional response? It feels like using a sledgehammer to crack a nut, maybe, or like solving a $39 million problem by creating a, I don't know, $1 billion panic and access crisis. That scale just seems off.
That is the ultimate tension, isn't it? And clearly the government decided that the potential for massive AI-driven fraud outweighed the, let's call it, significant inconvenience and financial disruption for anyone who didn't comply quickly.
A tough calculation. So, given they are targeting this high-value crime, what are the actual triggers? When does this biometric check kick in?
Yeah, the rules are pretty specific, and they seem aimed at, well, non-trivial transactions.
Yeah.
It makes it hard to avoid if you're an active user.
Okay.
First, it's required for any first-time authentication.
Hmm.
So securing new accounts makes sense.
Right.
Second, it kicks in for any single online transfer over 10 million Vietnamese dong. That's about, what, 379 USD?
Okay, not a tiny amount, but not huge either for some businesses or transfers.
Exactly. And third, if your combined transactions in a day, the source mentions transfers cumulatively surpassing 20 million dong, about 758 the USD, then you also need that biometric check.
So, regular activity, larger transfers, boom, you need the face scan.
Basically, yes. They're setting financial thresholds that demand this higher security clearance.
Right. And when you flex that kind of regulatory muscle, even with good intentions like fighting fraud, well, you inevitably pour fuel on the fire for the self-sovereignty crowd.
Oh, absolutely.
The Bitcoin proponents, naturally, they must have had a field day with this story. This is precisely where they step in and say, see, this is why we Bitcoin.
It feeds directly into their core philosophical argument, doesn't it? That people should have access to their own funds, period. Free from external interference, especially government overreach. When the state can literally force you to fly across the globe just to get your savings, well, those funds aren't really sovereign, are they?
Not in any meaningful way. And Daniel Batten, he pointed this out directly, didn't he? Saying this isn't just about security. It hands Vietnam's central bank, quote, next-gen financial surveillance ability.
The security fix becomes a potential control mechanism, or at least has that capability.
Yeah.
And it really highlights that security arms race we talked about earlier.
Right.
Maybe a metaphor helps here.
Let's hear it.
Fighting this AI fraud with mandatory biometrics. It's kind of like constantly building your castle wall higher every single time the enemy builds a taller ladder.
Ah, okay. I see where you're going.
We're just escalating the centralized security measures, which ultimately puts more and more burden on the individual user, the person inside the castle, who has to keep jumping through these new, often really restrictive hoops just to live their life.
That's actually, yeah, that's incredibly insightful. Because if that castle wall metaphor holds, does that mean every time centralized security gets upgraded to fight new tech, the cost for the average user just goes up in hassle, in time, in lack of control?
That's the argument, exactly. It feels like an unsolvable loop within centralization.
Yeah.
And Marty Bent, again, he points out, look, these kinds of punitive capital controls, they aren't new.
Right.
Even just since Bitcoin's been around. Think about the list he mentioned. Lebanon, Turkey, Venezuela, Cyprus, Nigeria, India.
Wow, quite a list.
Yeah. This pattern of freezing funds, restricting access, imposing sudden new compliance burdens, it happens. It's a global thing in the traditional system.
So the centralized system itself, almost by design, is vulnerable to this kind of regulatory shock, let's call it.
You could say that.
So what's the alternative then, according to the advocates?
Well, the belief is in permissionless protocols. The idea is if you remove the trusted third party, the bank, the government, in this case, you remove that central point of failure or control.
Get rid of the gatekeeper.
Precisely. To quote Marty Bent directly here, once you use Bitcoin as your bank and do it correctly, there is no need to worry about your country's government or central bank deciding on a whim to thrust biometric verification requirements on you. You hold the keys yourself. The key holder isn't the bank anymore.
Right. That's the core argument for absolute sovereignty. Okay, but now, Let's pivot slightly. We need to add some context here, some nuance. Because 86 million is a terrifying number.
It really is.
But are 86 million active Vietnamese citizens actually suffering a financial crisis right now because of this? Is the impact as widespread locally as that number suggests?
That's the critical balance we need to bring in. We saw a report where a crypto executive, someone actually based in Vietnam, told Cointelegraph the news might be, quote, overblown.
Overblown? How?
They said they hadn't really seen a massive local outcry among the majority of Vietnamese citizens who are, actively banking day to day.
Okay, interesting. So who are the 86 million then, predominantly? If it's not causing mass panic locally?
Well, Hubert Sim, he's the CMO of ASEAN. He seemed to confirm it hits two groups particularly hard.
Which are?
First, foreigners who've left the country, like our Reddit user, Yuxor. Makes sense, right?
Really?
They can't easily pop back for a face scan.
Right, the physically absent ones. And the second group?
People with casual accounts, inactive ones, maybe accounts they forgot they even had, dormant accounts.
Ah, okay. So those 86 million. It's likely a massive mix of old, forgotten accounts, plus expats and others who are no longer physically there to comply.
That seems to be the picture emerging.
And this is but the operational hurdle, the actual process, it's the same barrier for everyone, right? Whether your account is active or dormant, if you're abroad, you're basically locked out by the requirement itself.
Absolutely. That doesn't change. The core hurdles are still those requirements for one-time passwords, often tied to a local Vietnamese phone number.
Which expats might not have anymore.
Exactly. Phone bindings and, crucially, that need for in-person biometric verification. If you aren't physically present or your old phone number is dead, the system effectively treats your money as potentially fraudulent or at least inaccessible. Doesn't matter how much or little is in there.
Okay. So if we try and synthesize this whole deep dive, what we have is a government, Vietnam's government, genuinely trying to solve a serious multi-million-dollar AI fraud problem.
A real threat.
A real threat. But the method they chose, this centralized, mandatory, in-person biometric system, it has these severe, maybe partly unforeseen consequences for financial freedom, especially for anyone who isn't physically in the country or actively using their account daily.
Yeah.
It really is a perfect, if extreme, illustration of this ongoing global friction, isn't it? Between fighting sophisticated, modern financial crime and ensuring individuals actually maintain control over their own assets within these highly centralized banking systems.
It's a critical case study, for sure. And this deep dive, it gives us, and hopefully you listening, so much to think about regarding, well, the future of security itself.
How so?
Well, think about it. If AI is advancing so fast that it can easily defeat things like liveness detection, how long will any centralized biometric measure, fingerprint, iris scan, face recognition, how long will any of them remain truly secure?
That is the key question, isn't it, for everyone listening? If this security arms race keeps demanding constantly updated, localized, often physically mandated compliance measures, what does that actually imply about the long-term stability, the accessibility of our regular centralized bank accounts?
Yeah.
It feels like it fundamentally challenges that basic assumption we all make, that the bank can reliably protect our identity and money against exponentially advancing tech without demanding ever-increasing levels of personal hassle, burden, and frankly, sacrificing our sovereignty.
It really forces us to ask, is this escalating biometric burden the inevitable future of financial security? Or is it maybe just the final, perhaps unsustainable stage of centralization trying to keep up?
That's a powerful thought to leave everyone with. Look, if this deep dive sparked your curiosity or maybe even some concern, make sure you follow, like, and share the information you've just learned. Help get the conversation going.
Definitely.
And of course, for more insights like this, you can follow What Bitcoin Taught Me on all the socials. Twitter X, Nostr, Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn.